Okay, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to today. This is going to be an unbelievably important masterclass to work through today. If you're building a multi-million dollar family business, I am so excited that you, personally, yes, you, the person listening to this masterclass right now, watching us on YouTube or just listening in your AirPods as you're going on a run or what have you, I am so glad that you joined us today. Because if you're here, it means you have a desire to do something, move the needle, or improve something in your life that causes a reality that you desire very greatly. And just the fact that you actually desire something is already an incredible accomplishment. So many people out there today, they they've lost all concept of actually you the whether or not you actually even should desire something. In fact, in the Soviet Union, and the countries that fell apart thereafter. My, I'm talking, and I can speak to this because my wife is from that area of the world. Um, uh, they broke down people, and they broke down their desire to desire anything, and they broke down the value of desiring anything else other than what they ascribe to what should be what you should want. And so, if you are in that position to where you actually desire something, and you're listening to this podcast, or if you're on YouTube watching it on the video, and you want to create a different outcome for your business or for your life, then you are in the right spot. Because I have been in the place where um, everything fell apart, nothing was working, everything didn't look like there was a really clear path forward to build anything meaningful in the future, and I just really didn't even just kind of I'd lost my current occupation, and and then I and then just like, okay, what do I do from here? Like, what, like, hit the bottom, you kind of just splat. You don't bounce back. There is no bouncing when you hit the bottom. You just like bam, and you're there. And so you got to build something meaningful. And in order to do that, you got to be intentional. In order to do that, you need probably some new information. And so that's exactly what I did when I was in that spot. And it helped me to bring me where I am today, which is a multi operator of a multi-million dollar company, operator, owner, founder, whatever you want to call it, of a multi-million dollar family business. And that's my wife and I. We operate this on a daily basis. And so in these master classes that you're getting right now, these are lessons that I wish I would somebody would have told me about 10, 12 years ago. I wish that somebody would have helped me walk through them 10, 12 years ago when we actually started this thing. We started on a card table in our living room. We scaled it to multi-million dollar status in the period of 10 years. And we did it like, like the way that you do it when you're not on YouTube and you're not this fancy, amazing content creator that somehow scales something from 1 to $12 million in 24 months. Like, we did it the hard way, the way that actually over time builds up, builds up, builds up, builds up, and builds durable relationships and prospers. So I'm not talking about theory here. Well, I'm going to be talking about some theory, but what I mean is I'm not a professor in a classroom that has never made payroll, that has never worked with contracts, that has never dealt with failing vendors, that has never dealt with angry clients. This masterclass is from a CEO of a company that works in our industry, which my company is Taika Translations. You can visit us taikatranslations.com or TVB team, and we've worked for years and years and years developing our brand and influencing our market and influencing the people who work in our market and developing relationships long term to build what we have today. So if you are in a spot in life where you want to build something different or you want to change the outcomes, and you heard somebody just sent you a clip of video, somebody sent you a maybe they sent you a short, or maybe they sent you one of my previous videos, and you said, hey, check this guy. They said, hey, check this guy out. Maybe he can help you with the thing you're facing. Or especially today, because we're talking about the issue of culture, company culture in the multi-million dollar family business. If somebody sent you that and they're like, hey, I heard you were dealing with this or something in your life, and they sent that message over to you, and you actually you're dealing with this in your company right now. I hope that this masterclass is a very, very bright spot and helps you to be able to navigate forwards, because when we work through the different challenges of business, and especially family business, which is what I own and operate, then we have to deal with the different aspects of the things that we don't know. There's so many times when we encounter situations that we don't have the answer to. We don't know how to work through because we've never been there before, or because we've never done it well. And when you don't do things well, you typically try to ignore them a little bit, try to put them off to the side, not deal with them, kind of not want to have to, because it's something I fail at or something I really suck at, and so I'm not going to really deal with that because I just am not good at it. And in some senses, in some senses, it's right to do the things that you're good at. But at the same time, if you're going to be owning and operating an organization, you're going to bring other people into your vision and your dream, and you're going to charge forwards into this world, charging the gates of hell and accomplishing something incredible with your team, then you're going to have to do this stuff sooner or later. You're going to have to build, create, and maintain a culture in your organization sooner or later. And so when we were talking about building a multi-million dollar company, a multi-million dollar family business, excuse me, then we have to deal with this issue of culture, and we have to do it incredibly well. And so if you know me, I am somebody who is very, I go from theory to practicality very, very rapidly, and sometimes back and forth multiple times throughout the entire class, so that you understand that it's not you don't sit there and get like an information dump with no practical usage. Now, there's going to be a lot of information that I'm going to be touching on in this. And because culture touches so many different areas inside the organization, I'm going to be talking about some different concepts in here that you're really going to want to pay attention to. And there's going to be follow-up videos about, so that it helps to understand or enhance and explain those items. So that being said, if you have a question, yes, you, the person who is listening to this video right now, I don't care if it's one of my friends. I don't care if it's one of my family members. I don't care if it's one of my children. If you have a question right now, please put it in the chat. I will answer your question throughout this masterclass. I will find a moment when I can stop and address that specific question, and then I will work through it, answering that for you. All right, so I'm going to pop to the next slide. There's a few myths in building company culture that we have to discuss. And by the way, when you're talking about when you're talking about building a company, you don't typically think, oh, well, let's talk about exactly how to build company culture. You're actually more than likely, you're thinking, okay, how can I make my sales work better? How can I make sales funnels work better? How can I connect with the right people? How can I build relationships? How can I hire somebody to do this thing? Or how can I outsource that? Or what program and software do I use for this? And now there's 12,000 AI agents, and Google is saying, and all the rest of the internet saying, if I don't use any of all of these things, then I'm going to just be bankrupt because 12-year-olds are making businesses as I sleep. And that's just, I mean, most of it's hype, guys. So there's a lot of stuff going on in the market. There's tons and tons of stuff going on in the AI world. My company, there is a complete human division processing our products, and we actually have a very powerful implementation of AI section in the production of our content, and the work that we do throughout the processes that function that operate our organization. So there are places for all of that stuff, but I want to kind of just smash that very first feeling for you that you are going to fail and you're going to miss out and you are not going to be able to succeed if you don't just launch everything all at the same time. In fact, that's a terrible strategy. What I see more evident and more practical and more profitable in all of the business work together is when you work and operate your company doing the best that you know how and the things that you know how to do, and you encounter a problem, you encounter a challenge that you need to overcome. And then you look at that challenge and say, man, I've never done that before. I don't know how to work through it. How am I going to deal with that? And then you're like, okay, what people what resources do I have on YouTube, in my social network that can help me solve this? What books can I find out in the marketplace that are recommended by great leaders out there who have dealt with this specific thing? Because all too often people go and they ask their Uncle Larry or their Aunt Sandy or Uncle Bill, and they will give advice on that thing, but they have never done that thing. Don't do that. What you need to do is to talk to people who have actually done that and done it recently, not 35 years ago, but actually in today's age. And that's why this masterclass is so relevant and so applicable for you, because we're actually in the day of AI. We're in the day of technology. We're in the day of all this disruption in the marketplace and change and contracting and all kind of stuff. And we're operating in it. We're operators in this marketplace, and we're building and scaling our company. And so we're sharing that information with you and those messages with you. And I hope this is very, very meaningful as you spend time together with me today. By the way, I want to make sure that after the masterclass, if you have a few moments, you're on a lunch break, or well, it's not lunchtime. Anyways, coffee break, I don't care, whatever it is, smoke break, coffee break, whatever you're doing, what kind of breaks you're doing. Um, I'm going to be I'm going to be doing a TikTok live. This is a completely new thing that I've started doing. After the YouTube live, I hop over to TikTok and I spend 30 minutes straight, plus or minus, not actually, not minus, plus maybe 5 minutes. And I spend 30 minutes straight on there, just chatting it up with anybody who needs answers on the subject that we talked about here. So you are more than welcome to ask a question in this chat. So Karina, my trusty team member, who's behind the scenes keeping me online and making sure that everything is going well, she will make sure that I see your message if I somehow I'm just in the content and I'm just not seeing the messages. And um, then after the masterclass today, feel free to jump over to the TikTok, and I'll answer any other kind of other questions you have there, kind of in a little bit more relaxed kind of live format. So, all right. That being said, there are some myths around company culture that I have encountered in my leadership, in my consultation with other companies, and we do business consulting as well, and leadership consulting, and these are some of the top three. And here's some myths that I just kind of want to debunk. So the top one is building company culture is extremely hard. In fact, it is not extremely hard. Is it something you have to be intentional about? Absolutely. But is it extremely hard? No. If you are a genuine person who's willing to be vulnerable and transparent, then you can build company culture. If you are not, if you're reserved, if you are guarded, if you have been wounded a lot of times in the past, and a lot of us are, I'm with you, I understand. Um, and you don't want to get burned again. Well, don't get burned again. Build, structure the life to where you don't get burned again, and don't trust the people you shouldn't trust. However, if you are willing to learn, to grow, and to look into the future and with a more hopeful mentality and say, okay, I can have genuine great people on my team who can cause prosperity in and through our business, then building company culture is not that hard. Okay, so building company culture is extremely hard. Myth, no, it is absolutely not extremely hard as long as you're ready to do the work. All right. Second myth, culture always stays the way it is and cannot be changed. There's nothing farther from the truth. You can decide change. You can decide to change. When you think about a great leader, when you think about anybody of great influence, what do you describe them as? Well, they were a muscle machine. They were a bodybuilder, full on steroid kind of dude. No, you don't. You don't describe it that way at all. You don't describe it that way at all. You say, well, um, they are disciplined. Okay. They are kind. They're compassionate. They're interested in others. They're generous. They're um, they're intentional. They set goals. They 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 just care genuinely about people, and the list goes on. And as you go through that list, you will find that every single one of those is a choice that you and I make every single day. It's a choice to change or not. And you and I we can all change. And I've had to change a lot. I've actually this year for our company in different ways, I've actually had to make some big personal changes, disciplining myself and change some aspects about my life. I've actually also had to change some of my health disciplines because I experienced terrible back problems in the past, and I've have very, very severe lower back issues. And From previous younger ages when I was doing some dumb stuff. And And so I've suffered greatly from that, but I've had to change the activity that I do now to become a better and more disciplined person so that I can serve and protect my family and provide for them into the future, regardless of what my past was. I've injured, got all the kind of problems with that. Fine. How do I fix that the best way I can to protect and provide for my family going into the future? And I can change. I can decide to change, and so can you. So culture is not always the same way, and it absolutely can be changed, and you have to decide to do it. So the myth number three I want to debunk here, this as we get into this content today, is I should not change any of our rhythms, even if they're ineffective, because anything is better than nothing. And this is really bad information. This is really bad advice. No, if something is ineffective, you need to address the elephant in the room, deal with it head on, and change stuff so that you can actually implement a program that works. And not changing, not being willing to change any of your rhythms because we've just always done it that way. In my company, we have a core value that's called we kill the sacred cows, which means when somebody says we just always have done it that way, it means it's probably time to reevaluate that process and maybe kill that sacred cow, adapting a new system that works much better, adapting an AI agent, adapting whatever, so that we can prosper in a more effective way. And so, no, if you have ineffective rhythms, acknowledge that, be truthful to yourself about that. And by the way, that's a big part of the culture, being transparent and truthful about those things that are not very pretty, and then charging forwards under a set of values. All right, my name is Jason Ellinger, as you can see on the slide. If you are new to the channel, please like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. It would help this channel greatly. If you're getting any value whatsoever out of this channel, please copy the link and share it with somebody that you care about that might be going through or wanting to do the thing that I'm talking about in the video today, which is culture, building multi-million-dollar family business. If you know anybody that wants to build a family business, please copy this link and send it to them and ask and just say, hey, you might benefit from seeing this guy because he's actually in our day and age 2025. This is December. I'm sorry, this is when November. Gosh, what month am I in? Day before Thanksgiving. Wait a minute, what is this? No, this is, yeah, Wednesday, day before Thanksgiving. And this guy actually owns and operates his own family ground built from card table in his living room up to multi-million-dollar status in 10 years, and he's done it with his family and brought other great team members to help them. And if they have any desire to do something similar, maybe they should like and subscribe to. And along the way, I'm teaching all the lessons that I've learned to you. So hopefully that's helpful to you. And please share our content with others. All right. Now we're going to get into the content. Now I'm going to kind of blaze forwards. Okay, so hold on to your seats because some people they complain at me for talking a little bit too fast, and then maybe not explaining. Maybe I haven't explained enough about the information that they would appreciate explanations on. So I'm going to do the best I can. And by the way, at this juncture, if you have any questions about company culture or building a multi-million-dollar family business and company culture that goes with it, please place it in the chat. And my team will make sure that I see that, and we'll charge forwards delivering this content to you today. Okay, company culture creation requires these three things: intentional sequences, not just mayhem, not just accidentally kind of happened that way, not just, well, we've just always done it that way, not just, well, it just happened. Intentional sequences that you have determined work for the good of the organization and for your team. All right. Number two, never dying consistency. Always the same. A drumbeat, consistent, same thing. Fair treatment for every single team member. Any in any I was going to start to say gender, blah, 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 blah. Look, in any stretch of the imagination, whatever could differentiate between any human on the face of the earth, fair and never dying consistency between how you treat and how you interact and how you apply the principles. Okay. And the intentional sequences. The third thing it must have is a team without major dysfunctions. You're like, what? Major dysfunctions? That sounds like a very obvious thing. There is a book written by Patrick Lencioni, and if you've listened to any of my content before, you probably, I mean, I mentioned him relatively often because he's one of the best consultants that I have ever encountered in my life. And he wrote a book on the five dysfunctions of a team, and that's what I'm referring to in this point. A team without major dysfunctions. And when you look at the five dysfunctions, the base, and I'm not going to go over this in this, that's not what this is about, but you do have to understand that it's a part of company culture. So I'm mentioning it here so that you understand its elementary essence in the process of building company culture. Now, a team without major dysfunctions. What are the five dysfunctions of a team? Vulnerability based trust. That's the foundation. If you don't have vulnerability based trust, that's why transparency, that's why clarity, and driving those sequences that work are so important. Vulnerability based trust, you can't drive to conflict, which is very, very important. You have to have conflict in order to get commitment. In order to get commitment, or to drive to commitment, uh, um, you have to be able to get through the conflict without killing each other or calling each other bad names and operating completely viciously. And then you have to get from that to the accountability level and be trusting each other on a vulnerability based level way to be able to be held accountable to each other, because only after these four building blocks do you hit the results. And so that is what I'm referring to in the five dysfunctions, in a team without major dysfunctions. Because if you have a team and these dysfunctions exist, then you will have a terrible, terrible time trying to force all kind of culture into your company. No, you first have to have the element of having a non-dysfunctional team already in as a reality. Now, I'm gonna do. I mean, I've done some videos on this, and I'm going to do another video on that in the future. Just like and subscribe to make sure that you know that you get that stuff when it comes out too. But I'm gonna help you with that part as well. But right now, I'm not gonna go over that because that takes us like a series of videos just to get through it. All right, these three things: intentional sequences, never die inconsistency, and a team without major dysfunction. Now, why does any of this matter? Wait, did I miss a slide? No, we're good. Why does any of this matter? Isn't this just a bunch of theoretical jabbering? Company culture. Well, company culture leads to a lot of things. And to name a few, I've just listed a few top ones right here, but it leads to a lot more things. More productive activity, happier clients, happier leaders, happier team members, more money, just to name a few. It's not just theory. Having great culture in your organization is not just theory. We had the most incredible team member gathering just a few days ago, and it was so meaningful to me to see all of our team members and many of their family members come to this meeting and take part in that, and just to enjoy it, just like a fellowship, basically. It was an annual party that we do for the organization, and people bring their families, and we have a really cool event, and it's just a lot of fun. And it's amazing to see that the culture from the organization is because the families are obviously their family members work here. It's so much associated with who they are that their family members also kind of exude and feel that as well. And so it's an entire ecosystem of of people who are producing this essence in the organization that cause each other and the organization as a whole to prosper while at the same time being unified. And that is such a special thing to be able to be in an environment like that. And so it's not theoretical jabber. It's more productivity. It's happier clients. It's stronger teams. It's more money. It's in every single area of the organization. When you have great culture in the company, The right decisions are made even when you are not in the room. And there is no further, like, there is no greater gold mine for me. And this is something that we had to learn to train our team members very early on. Like, I want you to make decisions this way, and these are the reasons, and these are the values by which you make them. And when you do that, even if you screw up and the deal doesn't turn out, I'm not going to be mad, because you did, you tried your best to do exactly what we do here, and that's how we believe we're going to succeed. So if you did that, then you're good. And so many times that turns out amazing. Like 99.99% it turns out amazing. And then there's that really tiny point zero whatever percent chance that that it somehow doesn't turn out incredibly well. But that's fine, because they, most of the time, those decisions are made even when the leaders are not in the room, but they're made correctly based on all this foundation that we have already built into the culture of the company. So culture is something that helps our organization to operate effectively in good times and bad times, and engages all of the values that our organization exists to, and even its purpose in the administration of the organization, on the team, and in the marketplace. Now, what are the elements of culture? An aware leader. You must be aware that culture is a thing, and that you have to do something about it, because how can you create intentional sequences without that, right? If you're not aware and you just don't know that you're supposed to do something about this and that should be a thing, then you just don't deal with it. And I guess, for some sense, in some ways, when I started our organization, it was like, well, I just got to feed my family. I just got to figure that part out. After that, we can look at other fluffy stuff, and that kind of whatever does something that sounded like jibber jabber to me. But right now, I just got to make some money and feed our family. And that might be you, but eventually we've got to get to the point where we are developing a system that creates culture in our organization. And that's why I'm doing this masterclass, because it's so important, and it makes you so much, it increases your quality of life and living so much. Now, second thing we have to have is a cascading communication leadership team. Oh, what a painful subject. I don't know how many times I've seen this in the past. And I'm currently consulting with an organization. In fact, my wife is helping in this consultation project, and she's the main consultant there. And so many organizations exist without a cascading communication leadership team. Their leadership team does a whole bunch of steam and talking in their leadership meeting, and they leave their meeting and they go to their departments, and none of that information that came from that leadership team meeting actually gets trickled down into the teams throughout their departments in a consistent way whatsoever. It's misaligned. They come back to the meetings. They follow up on the projects. They follow up on the reports. They look at and they're like, well, why is this not done? How is that objective not completed? Why are we lagging behind here? And it's because they don't have a team, a leadership team that's doing cascading communication very well. And that destroys whatever ability you have to create culture, because it creates misalignment. I heard this from Cindy, but Sandy said that came out of the meeting. But Jimmy said this was actually the decision we made, and all this kind of dissonance throughout the organization. And it creates a lack of harmony and lack of productivity, ultimately costing you a lot of money. So, elements of culture must include a cascading communicating leadership team. Now, we're not going to go over all that in this video, but stay tuned for the future videos where I go over the stuff. All right. A devoted team. Yeah, a devoted team. Not just a team, not just employees that show up and steal while they're there. What? Did you just say that? Yes, I did. This is the reason I call my team members, because the definition of employee to me is somebody who shows up and steals while they're there. But a team member is somebody who shows up, produces culture, and invests in the organization for the good of many, for the good of the entire team. And so a devoted team is required. If your team is not devoted, you will not be able to build, in fact, a culture in your organization. If they just show up to earn a paycheck, you will not be able to build good culture in your organization. It starts with you. It starts with you being intentional, and you can create it. And even even if you've been operating for a while and you're kind of frustrated with the culture of your organization, um, and you don't know why people simply don't care. Well, it probably has a lot to do with culture. It may have to do with hiring. It might also have to do with firing, but it most likely has to do with you being intentional about the issue of culture in the organization. So, that being said, a devoted team is a required element of culture. Now, fourth thing that must be true are the values and rhythms that create alignment. These are what we're going to start going over in the next videos. Because without these elements, you cannot create and cultivate culture. Now, what areas of the organization does culture touch? Now, I alluded to this earlier, but it freaking touches everything in every area. If you're a bookkeeper, you're entering data and you don't care about the details, it's gonna matter. If you're in marketing and you are frustrated sending emails to clients and you just start getting angry because they're not responding the way that you're supposed to, it's going to impact that. And you're going to start chewing out clients and they're going to go further away from you than they were before. If you're in sales or you're in leadership, it touches every single aspect of how you make decisions and administrate the business. So, I hope that I've very effectively communicated that culture touches everything in the organization. And that's why we as leaders have to deal with it and make sure that we're very intentional. Otherwise, our lack of intentionality would create culture that we hate. Now, let's talk about some rhythms. So, we talked a little bit about some theory stuff. We gave some information. We busted some myths to this point. Now, let's kind of roll into some rhythms that these are actions that you can take with you from this meeting and go actually apply to your situation and cause it to prosper. Now, listen, if you're here still at this point and you're listening to this message on culture, I know that it can be kind of boring. And but if you're still here, it means that it's important enough for you to be here and spend your time listening to this. So if it is, then that means that there may be a question in your mind about how you need that's something you need answered, or maybe a specific situation going on that you would really like some help with. If that is the case, send me a message right now and I will answer that question. All right. Now, first thing you have to do is to set up some meekly meetings. I like that. I like that for mixed up. Meekly meetings. Have some meekly meetings. No, weekly meetings. Okay. So set up weekly meetings. We're like, oh, well, we already have weekly meetings. All right, hold up. Wait a minute. Just wait. This is going to require you to do more meetings, not less. What? I don't want to hear about more meetings. More meetings means less productivity. More time spent in meetings, being less productive, just jabbering. Okay. If all you do in your meetings is jibber jabber and don't get anywhere, well, that's a problem. And we got to deal with that. But that's a session for another series of videos, which I do on meetings, how to run effective meetings in your organization. But doing less meetings is a terrible idea. Doing more meetings will only help you to transfer information faster and get more productive results faster if you're doing them well. Talk about that in another session. All right. What are the weekly meetings? Well, I'm glad you asked because I'm going to answer. Here are the weekly meetings that I do personally as a CEO of a multi-million dollar family business. I do a charge into the week intro to the week with our team. A reminder of the values on Monday morning, and I do a message to the entire team. Gosh, what is wrong with me today? My letters from the first letter of the words are getting mixed up. All right, I do a weekly Monday morning. We call it MMV, Monday morning video, and broadcast to the team members who are not local, and a message and then just a staff meeting for the local. So I broadcast this every single Monday with rigid discipline. And I talk for about 30 minutes, a value related to our organization. Also mention the thematic goal. Also to talk about actually I'm going to talk about that one about 5 lessons ahead. And then I talk about how that applies to this week. and our mission, charging forwards. So this is something that you as a leader need to start implementing into your weekly routine. What? I have to weekly talk about this? You have to daily talk about this. Like every single day, you have to talk about something that pertains to something where the values or the or the purpose of your organization. Like that is part of your job. If you own the thing, if you run the thing, this is part of your day job. When you come to work, you are disseminating, you are cultivating, you are investing, you are clarifying the values, mission, and all of the elements that lead to culture driving factors in your organization. So, first thing you do, charge into the week with a reminder of the values on Monday. Now, don't do them all because if you have like 12 values, you know, and you've been in business for a while, and you're like, well, these three were the first three, and these are the core, but there's like 12 others that we really want to make sure that our team members have, and that must be a reality for them in order to work here. So, um, how do we, how do we, how do we, don't talk about them all in one every single Monday. And by the way, you have to do it next Monday too. So it gives you content to be able to share with your team on a consistent basis. Now, you don't have to do it like I do. You don't have to do it 30 minutes. I try to keep it to about 24. But the point is that you have to lead the week you have to lead into the week strong and deliver that message of hope, inspiration, and clarity to your team around what it is your company values. And this is a very first step into every single week. More meetings, not less, remember, but very, very effective and profitable meetings, not just a bunch of meetings where everybody's complaining and jibber jabbering. All right, next, direct report one-on-one meetings. This is also a video I'm going to do in the future. But direct report one-on-one meetings is where you deal with your specific direct reports, and every person on in your organization has a meeting with their direct leader every single week, and you talk about what was supposed to be done, what will be done, what they did, and what will be done between this meeting next week, and if they need any help, and any values that pertain to this work they're working on in the organization during that meeting. And you try to keep it short, hopefully less than 45 minutes, and you do that every single week. That is one of the practices that we use to, first of all, be transparent, drive to clarity, and show we care, and develop and cultivate culture. Third, department head meetings. Now, every head in my department, or every head of my department has a team with their leader or with me, because I might be their direct manager. And those department head meetings, of course, they're delivering reports on a consistent basis through what's going on in that section, what the progress was made, what are the big rocks that we're working on, and so forth. So those are going to happen every single week. And of course, your leadership team. Your leaders cannot maintain a level of cascading communication that is effective without a weekly leadership meeting. Now, I have tried monthly meetings. I have tried bi-weekly meetings. I have tried every other month meetings because I've hated meetings in the past. And one of the parts of my history was I hated them so much because I thought they were so ineffective, and a waste of time, um, that I had to do some soul searching and really find out what to do with the issue of meetings in the organization, and actually how to make them good and effective and impactful. So that's all about driving to, that's all about initiating the meeting with the drama, and then driving into the meat of the meeting, and actually coming out with very productive outcomes, and not making it longer or shorter than it should be. But at the end of every meeting, that the person can say, we had a great meeting. And so, um, uh, the leadership meetings, they must happen on a weekly basis. I've tried all different types. The most effective by far is the weekly leadership meeting. You gather your leaders in the room every week and face the facts. When you face the facts week after week, number one, you'll see the facts earlier and often, and you'll make faster decisions. And number two, you will have a much higher likelihood of communicating to your team very consistently what the heck it is we're working on, the direction that we're going, and the biggest issue we're facing. And when you do that consistently with that transparent level in accordance with your values, man, it changes the scenery. All right. So for rhythms to be effective, excuse me, just okay. All right, we're good. For rhythms to be effective, your company values must exist. Seems kind of obvious. You're like, what are you talking about? What do you mean by values? All right. I'm gonna unpack that in the next, in not the next video, but we're going. I think it's not the next video, but it's 2 videos ahead. So I'm going to start to answer these questions for you. And it's very important that you stick with these videos, because if you just get this information, but you don't have that, then you won't have the whole picture and you won't be able to apply the whole package. So I want to make sure you have the whole package and you can actually apply it. So stick with me and make sure you subscribe and make sure you can see those follow-up videos for this. So you must have company values. We'll talk about that in the next video. All right. You cannot remind anyone of the required behaviors and values if they are not clearly defined and repeatable. If you do not have those values clearly defined for the behaviors of how we in the organization behave here, then you're going to have a very hard time creating and developing and cultivating in any kind of culture in the organization. So that's for another video. All right. Every decision made every day must align with the values. So if I don't have the values and I'm making decisions every day, the quality of your decisions is probably not very high. I don't want to be mean to you, but if you don't have clearly defined values for the organization right now, and you're not operating in a way that you're making decisions based on those very consistently over time, that means your strategy is probably kind of poor and your decision making factors are kind of poor. But don't worry, it's all right. Hang in there. We were all once there and we improved. We changed. And so I would just recommend that you really start to engage with this and really start to understand that, will this cost me something in order to implement? Absolutely. 100%. In fact, the economics of great leadership in organizations, they don't look so great for the leader. However, they're an unbelievably powerful service to humanity. They're a service to your team, they're a service to their family members, and they even protect and care for each and every one of those children in your organization. No, not in your organization, like the children of the people who work in your organization. We're not talking about slave labor here, so don't get any crazy ideas. All right, so I just want to make sure that you understand those concepts as we work forwards. All right, now this last one is very important, and it's a little bit contradictory. Or it's a little bit contradictory. Not contradictory. It can make a lot of conflict if you're not paying attention. Now, if dissonance or misunderstanding arise in the organization about what the organization did with the application of its values in a certain situation, then leadership clarifies. Like, duh, why wouldn't they clarify? The team receives the clarity helpfully. And this is why what I said earlier about a functional team, that your team cannot have the five dysfunction of a team. They cannot exist in your team if you're going to build great culture. Because what is going to happen is, one day down the road, a situation is going to come up and you're going to have to deal with that as an organization. And leadership's going to meet. They're going to be in the room. They're going to discuss the situation, and they're going to say, "Well, this is the direction we have to go." And then those leaders are going to go back to their departments and say, "This is the direction we're going." Da, 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 da. The people in those departments are going to hear that. They're going to look at that information that was just delivered to them, and they're like, "Well, that's not in accordance with our values. That doesn't align with how we do things here." And all of a sudden, all of this trickle effect of almost gossip, but not, because this came from leadership and is sharing this information throughout the organization. It starts to happen in the organization. This murmuring starts to happen in the organization, and leadership, you have to gather the team back together in the staff meeting, and you might have to do a very special meeting to deal with such a situation, where you stand before the team and say, "All right, these are the facts, these are our values, and this is how we made the decision based on those values." And once you have that meeting and you provide that level of clarity with the team, then they will very much more helpfully receive that clarity. And if they simply won't, and they say, "No, you're wrong, that's absolutely wrong, and you don't follow our values," well, that might be time for them to step out the door, because they might not have understood what those values meant, and maybe you weren't clarifying that to them in a way that they could fully and comprehend that, so that they could understand whether or not they still want to work there. Now, I know it's kind of like, it sounds a little bit frivolous on the hiring and firing thing, but if team members on your team do not value the values that you have, and understand how you as leadership apply those values, then they no longer are no, okay. If they don't understand and appreciate and accept that, then they no longer belong in your organization. And that's for you and them to deal with and to find out and to understand and to work on that together with. But it's very important for you as a leader to understand this. And I know that that's why this is very this could create a lot of conflict, or maybe even some ugly comments, I imagine, on the YouTube comments, because, well, how could that be the case? No, somebody says this is such a it's just such a misguided idea. Anybody should be able to work with anybody from any walk of life. Yeah, you might be able to, but why bother when there's so many people out there who kind of think like you appreciate the values that you have, and want to do things kind of the same way that you want to do them, and you can find them and work together with them. Why would you terrorize somebody else, force them to have to live out values that they don't appreciate? You shouldn't. And when you do, it destroys company culture. And they become a detractor from company culture instead of an adder, an investor, instead of a cultivator of company culture, like everyone in the organization should be. In fact, I've seen leaders of mine, um, when they understood how how the application of the values would be carried out, it's like, man, I don't value that at all. And that leader had to take a step back and say, wait a minute, if I don't have that value, and I cannot, in my conscience, apply that value that way, I'm going to be detracting from the organization by being here. And I've had leaders step down out of the organization because they realized that they were not in alignment. And anything and anyone in the organization that doesn't create alignment is misaligning, and that's going to cause breakdowns all throughout the chain of that workforce. And that simply is something that you as a leader have to be very, very aware of, and very pay high attention to. And your leaders at the highest levels hold them to that standard as well. Now, this is not some kind of cultish behavior. It's not some kind of crazy ideas. It's simply, we do things this way for this purpose. For example, um, our organization is a Christian company, and we live out the golden rule, and um, we treat others as we would have them treat, as we want them to treat us. That's how we do things here. And when that gets in the way of a profitable outcome, because we're treating others and we're doing something generous over here, and we're trying to help buddy, and that's like, well, we could create more profit if we didn't do that. Well, yeah, but this is how we operate. This is, if we were in that situation, we would want to be treated like that. Well, then we go ahead and do that, and somebody says, well, that's just dumb. Well, why is that dumb? That's in alignment with our values, and we here behave this way. And that's part of our culture. Well, I don't agree with that. Okay, well, that means you probably don't belong here. And that's the decision they get to make at that time. And so I just want to help you understand that this stuff translates into action and applicability, practicality, application very, very quickly, and sometimes very harshly. And so you as a leader must be aware of the very high importance of investing time and effort to understand and implement programs that work in the area of culture. Now, these rhythms that I talked about, the meetings, help you create constant cultural alignment, which is a leader's main job. So many people think, as they grow in the organization, that they no longer need to do the lower level jobs, or they were elevated to this position of authority because they were just a freaking rock star performer, and they deserve not to have to do any of the dirty work anymore. And that's not the case. In fact, a lot of times culture involves hard and very uncomfortable things. Well, this person behaved inappropriately towards that person during this, while they're working on this task force. Okay, the leader goes and says, hey, Joe, treated you treated Jimmy this way, and here on this team we don't do that. Like, well, I don't really care. Well, you have to care, otherwise you're going to lose your job. So we in this organization act this way. In the future, I want you to make sure that you act this way. And by the way, if you do this again, I'm gonna pay attention. I'm gonna talk to your leader and make sure that you're aligning with our values. Because if you can't work here anymore. And not threatening, but just very clear alignment. Because so many of us, as we start out, we just want to love on everybody, want to help and care for everybody. But the reality of the situation is that not everybody wants to love and be a part of your organization and invest in the team and in your mission. And even worse, if you don't have a mission that's not clear with no values and you don't know what the heck you're doing. So if that's the reality that you find yourself in, you will never be able to have a great culture. And so it drives to activity very, very quickly. And sometimes that action is very, very challenging. Those reminders are very, very challenging to deal with. You, as a chief executive of an organization, feel like you should be above having to remind people how to behave. Like, I hired adults. Why would I look? Person is on their cell phone during the meeting. You have to deal with that. We don't get on our cell phones during the meetings because of, I don't know, detracts from the intention of the team. Or somebody is humming during the meeting, kind of demonstrating that they're not even there, or they don't really care about the person who is delivering information at that time for the good of the organization. Or somebody's completely not engaging or nodding off during the meeting. No, we don't do that. Why? Because it detracts from the effectiveness of the meeting. If you're sleeping during the meeting, probably don't need to be in there in the first place. And if you are going to be there and you do need to be there, then you better contribute. And so those kind of reminders they happen from a cultural perspective. And you as a leader have to be aware of them. And so your job and my job in the organization is to continually go about the organization and even deal with those tough questions for our team. Is this a misalignment of our values? Is this a poor demonstration of, or maybe a completely the opposite of, how we behave here? And because if it is, we have to deal with that immediately and go forwards. Now, listen. The cool thing is, you're like, well, man, do you just go about every day, all day long, like looking for No, you don't do that. Whenever you have so that's why I was saying you set up the rhythms where you interact with your team members, and then as you interact with those team members, those are very appropriate and helpful times to be able to provide that consultation, that consulting level of mentorship to your team, to help them to grow, to help them to align, to help them to understand in a deeper level why the values are the way they are. And those only happen through consistent rhythms, because because driving to clarity is a thing that takes time and relationship building and explanation. And as you do that as a leader over many years, you will find that more and more of that culture is being expressed and being and be cultivated throughout the rest of the team, because they understand exactly what you mean when you say a thing a certain way. And even though maybe not doesn't mean exactly that those words, but because they have seen you practice this, because they've seen you be transparent, because they've seen you invest in the team, because they've seen you be generous when you should be generous, and they've seen you withhold when other times it would seem like you needed to expand, or be disciplined in a situation where things are scary, or charge or be reserved when the marketplace is incredibly optimistic, and you're careful about the growth of the organization so as not to hurt the team. And they see that builds into this trust over year after year after year, and causes your organization to be something that is far more than simply an entity that pumps cash. Maybe that's the organization that a lot of I see those messages on YouTube all the time. Pump cash, this pumps cash, that pumps cash, this is cash, cash, cash. Not If you really think about it, do you really want to work for an organization that's all they care about? Because most of the time, people leave those organizations, stay there very short. There's a huge level of churn because it is only about the cash. And ultimately, I want to be doing something far more meaningful with 8 to 10 hours of my day. All right. Alignment is created by answering the following questions. We're getting to the end of this section here, but it's very important that you know this. Alignment is created by answering these questions. Why do we exist? How do we behave? What is it that we do? how will we succeed? And what is most important right now? And who must do what? You're like, man, those are very elementary questions. Yes, they are very elementary questions. And most companies don't have the answers to at least four out of the six. They simply don't have the answers. They know what they do. They kind of know who should do what, but not really sure. And everybody's doing everything. Or they don't. This is a big one. Most organizations don't even know what's happening, what is most important right now. And if you're working somewhere, I would like you to think to yourself for a moment, do I know really and truly what the number one most important thing for my organization is for this period right now? What is the number one thing? Like, well, obviously we need to make some sales. We have to, or maybe you're working in accounting. And, "Oh, we need to, do all these receivables." No, that might be true for you in your sections, but what is the number one objective for the organization right now? See if you can answer that question. Like, you probably work somewhere. If you're listening to this masterclass, you're typically, we see from the graphics of the age graphics from the people who watch our videos. You're probably 18 to somewhere around 45 years old. And if you could you think about your organization right now, what is the number one thematic goal for the organization? Do you know it? If you do not know it, well, leadership's not doing their full job. I'm not dissing them. I'm not telling, I'm nagging on, but then you need to know this. If when you ask the people on my team what's most important for our organization right now, they'll tell you. And they know how their role is associated with that and how we're working on that together. So who must do what? That's very simple. Who must do what? But these are questions I'm going to be answering in the master classes ahead and help you understand how you can build your playbook with the answers to these questions for your organization. Because it also just so happens to be that when you answer these six questions, you give your organization the best possible chance to survive the storms of business. And the storms are coming. The challenges are coming. The issues are coming. The winds are going to blow. Disruption is going to happen. Stuff is going to freaking happen. If it's really good right now, just appreciate that and know that there's a storm coming. I'm not being negative. I am positive it's gonna rain. And when it rains, you need to be prepared. In order to be prepared, you have to have the answers to these six questions, and it carries you through the tough times in life and in business. And so I'm going to help you. This was something that was taught to me, and I'm going to help you by delivering this information to you, so that as you listen to each of those series, as answering those questions, that you have a very clear plan coming out of it for how exactly you can that applies to your business, and then how you can take that to your leadership team and say, every single time we come to our leadership team, here's the playbook, and this is what we go by. Now, this is the issue of that we're dealing with right now. But how do we deal? How does that relate and to our strategy and the actual playbook that we have demonstrated, helping us to understand and guide us forwards. So whether it's a good time or a bad time, you still need that. And so I'm going to be going over that, and I'm going to help you to be able to understand exactly how to create that. So stay tuned, like and subscribe to the videos so that you don't miss those very, very important sessions, because without that stuff, building culture is impossible. Now, I wanted to do the culture part, this culture session first, because it's so important as you and it extracts and it takes so much of that information from the answers to those questions and puts them into practical reality in your organization in order to be able to prosper forward. So that's why we have this masterclass today on culture. Now, quick recap. Let's go over, what did I talk about today? You must have intentional sequences. You must be incredibly consistent. Cascading leadership, communication. If it's not a reality, it must become a reality. A team without major dysfunctions. 5 dysfunctions of a team, if they're a reality in your organization, you will have a hard time creating culture. And 6, I'm sorry, 5. 5 is answer the 6 questions. Now, thank you so much for being on this masterclass today. I really appreciate the fact that you joined me and you stuck with me to this point. Please share this video with a friend, like and subscribe, and I will see you next week, where we talk about answering the first of the 6 questions on how. Here we go. I'm going to put them up. Why do we exist? And it's not what you think. So I want you to make sure. I want you to jump in and join that because it's very, very important in building that alignment that ultimately comes out in a playbook and then helps you create culture in your organization. Thanks again, and I look forward to see you in the TikTok. I'm just about to launch in a couple minutes. So go to my TikTok channel and follow me there, and I will pop on and have a little bit more like laid back conversation. Okay. Thank you very much. See you there.